Hi, my name is Pam Carriker, and I'd like to welcome you to Recycled Journal Pages, a workshop that's going to teach us to reuse and recycle previous artwork and things found around the house to create wonderful journal pages that are full of inspiration and full of you. For week one, we're going to gather our supplies together, and I'm using this Strathmore watercolor journal, and it has the 140-pound paper in it. I really like the weight of this paper for the type of collage and artwork that I'm doing because it's going to involve layers of paint and paper built up. The next thing that you will need are some color copies of previous journal pages or artwork. Or even if you didn't have anything, if you're just starting out, you could use scrapbook papers. And what I look for are the colors more than the images. So I go through and I pull a bunch of colors that I think will work together on a new page, and that's how I get started. So get a bunch of copies of that. Gather some newspapers or mail or any kind of ephemera that you have laying around the house that you want to use in your work as well. And then a collage glue. I use a matte medium for my collage glue, and you will need a paintbrush as well. And gather those together, and we're going to get... One thing that you can do as you make your color copies is to resize images. The original image was very small in my journal, or actually the original journal page was about halfway in between this and this. And what I did was, color copied one in a small and then one larger, because when you change the size of some of the images, that also helps to change the feel of your new page that you're going to be creating with existing journal pages. So that's one thing to look for when you are making your color copies. The next thing that we're going to do is actually cut out the images, and I like to do a combination of cutting and tearing. So some of the images will be cut out and some will be torn. And so I like to gather a pile of images that are cut all together, and then so when I actually start gluing, I have lots of things to pull from to use. So go ahead and cut out a bunch of different images. Another thing that you might want to do is simply tear strips. Torn strips are very effective on journal pages for different areas. So I like to take kind of a plainer journal page and actually just tear some strips as well. Now I'm going to take my collage materials that I copied and cut and tore out, and I'm going to start positioning them on the page. And one little trick that I like to do is position them on one page and then glue them to the opposing page, because then you remember how you had everything laid out. It's a little easier to keep track of things. So I just kind of start by playing around with the layout. I'll lay images down and then see if I like them and change them around. And sometimes I like to add fun things. I'll rip pieces of paper as needed. If something doesn't fit quite right, then I just kind of rip it until I get kind of, what I think I want for my layout. And the fun thing about doing this is you can totally change the image that you started with just by adding the all of the different collage materials from previous pages. You can even change, I could change the tilt of her head even by simply cutting it away from the neck. This allows me to further change this image because I could tilt her head different angles, which is kind of fun too, a little playful. I kind of like that. Position them around until I get to a point where I think I'm going to like it. I go back and forth a lot, so bear with me here. And a lot of times strips of paper that came from journal pages are really great to use underneath the images. They add lines for journaling later on in the process, and it just gives really good interest. So a lot of times that's kind of what I'll do. I'll add some lines. And like I said before, I go mostly by color. I'm not being completely particular about the actual images that are being used when I print out the materials. And that's half of the fun, because you end up with a bunch of things that go together color-wise, and then you're going to put them together to make a new theme page. And I think that's what this is, probably close to what I'm going to be doing, because I think that's enough enough stuff. And I did clip some words here that say Journey of the Heart. Where's the, I have a little heart here. Yeah, I think that will be cute. Could put the heart even on her cheek. And then this says Journey of the Heart, so I could add that on too. I like that. Oh, and I have this cute flower. Maybe I'll do that too. Okay, so you can see how you can kind of lay it out. And then what I do is I'm going to move this stuff over here. And I'm not exactly sure where I want to put these words, so I'm setting those off to the side. I'll figure that out at the very end of the gluing process. So now I'm going to move to gluing. I'm going to glue the images, and I'm going to glue them to the opposing page because I kind of have the layout that I want. And I'm going to use some, I'm using some collage glue. I use a matte medium for my collage glue, and an old brush because the glues tend to kind of mess up your brushes anyway. So I always use an old brush, and I dampen it first and just get some of the glue onto the brush, and then I'm going to lay my lines out first because those will be the underneath layer. And so I just paint it to the back. And then paint it also to the page, adding water as needed to make sure that it flows smoothly onto the page. And then I'm going to lay these on. I'm going to let the excess hang off and not worry about it right at the moment. I'll rip that off later. Okay. And sometimes you will get a little bleeding from the ink depending on the type of printer ink that your printer uses. And that's okay because we're reusing these and redoing the whole journal page. So a little bleeding of what you're using is actually kind of nice. It helps that look of, helps the page to start to take on its own. Don't worry about that. And the reason that I put glue on the back of the paper and onto the journal page is just because you get really good adhesion of the two pieces of paper and you don't get as many air bubbles. And I just continue the layering process. I continue transferring images to the other side of the page, adding glue, putting the glue over the top of the image as well as underneath, and that will seal in those printer inks nicely. And if you find yours is bleeding, don't overwork the painting on it too much. Just a nice light coat to adhere it, and continue working in this way until all of the images have been transferred over and glued down. As you go along and add your images, you may find that you need to cut some of them to fit properly, and so you just do that as you go. This could also be tucked behind, easily tucked behind and just layered over the top of. So just trim as need be and keep adding your collage. When you get to the end of the gluing and these are still just a little bit wet, it's really easy just to rip those off right along the edge. So don't worry if you have large pieces that are just overhanging, rip those off after you get everything glued down, and that's just fine, and save those little bits for maybe another piece later on. And then let this dry really well. You now have your nice collage journal page, and it's ready to be recycled into something completely new. So have fun, gather your supplies, and collage a page created from recycled artwork and ephemera that you have found from around your home.